What's up, Night Owl? Still here back with another video, and today we're going to be starting our very first episode of backstory reviews. And if this series takes off, then I will probably rename it. But this is where I'll be having a look at your backstories, viewer submitted backstories, and sort of redlining them, kind of going over my thoughts as a DM and what I would do with this backstory and improvements that I would make to it. Because this is the very first episode of this series, I'm going to be reviewing a backstory of a character that I made way back when I first started playing D&D in high school. This is just to sort of give you an idea of how I'm going to be approaching these reviews. That way I don't offend anyone if I'm overly critical. I just want you to get like a grasp of how I'm going to be picking apart these backstories and what I'm going to do with them. If you would like a guide on how to write backstories, I'll leave a link to that down in the description. I'll also have it pop up right up here. And if you have a backstory that you would like me to review, I will have a backstory submissions text channel in the Discord. You can upload a text file and I will look over them, and I will try to do a video every week on backstory reviews. That's the plan. All right, so with that out of the way, let's have a look at Marklin the Wizard. Marklin is a wizard that studied at the most prestigious college in the kingdom. All right, so let's have a look at this first line. Right away, we have a location, the most prestigious college in the kingdom. Whenever this comes up, if you're a DM and something like this comes up where it's sort of vague, like the most prestigious college, this is the player telling you, I don't know what the most prestigious college is in your setting, but I would like you to sort of put that here. And this very first line is something that you as the DM, or I as the DM, whoever submitted this, I would go over with. And I run primarily Forgotten Realms, so this is something I would use, like the High Tower in Luskin or the Candlekeep Library. I would go over the player specifically to pinpoint what this college, this most prestigious college that they have in mind. If a player actually puts a specific college in their backstory, then you as the DM would have to place that somewhere. But when they leave it open-ended like this is your job to decide what that is and kind of get with the player about that. So that very first line, that's fine. We have a location. He mastered magic at a very young age and was considered a prodigy by many of his teachers. So right away, this is a gifted young wizard who is beginning to master magic quickly. It's pretty typical. One thing to keep in mind if you're playing a child prodigy like that is you're inexperienced. That's kind of what you're going into as a child prodigy. Is you may know a lot about the monsters in the world, but you can't tell when somebody's trying to swindle you, kind of thing. So possibly a low wisdom, high intelligence character if you do stats based off backstory. I don't really care for that, but some people do that. So that's a little bit about your character from that line. Marklin didn't favor any one school of magic and instead specialized in all schools, so he wouldn't have to restrict himself from learning about other schools. If Marklin did have a specialty, it was spellcraft and crafting magic items. All right, so these two lines are mainly about your character, mostly about your character sheet, I guess, or what your character does. This isn't too important for a DM. This is just kind of fluff. It's not really necessary. You can put it in your backstory for your own reasons, and this would, I guess, this would kind of give your DM an idea of what you plan on building. They don't favor any one school of magic, so they're kind of going to be all over the magic spectrum. And in 3.5, wizards actually had to choose one specialty school, and they actually had to choose two schools to be restricted. Now, it's not necessarily restricted in the sense that they can't use spells from that school, but it is restricted in the sense that it's more difficult to add them to. I believe it's more difficult to add to the spell book, or maybe more difficult to prepare them. I can't remember. So, for example, let's say you were specialty necromancers. A lot of necromancer specialty school wizards, a lot of necromancers would choose illusion and enchantment as the restricted school. Those are both mind affecting, and undead don't really have minds. So those are generally, if you pick a necromancer, those would be your two restricted schools. That's just an example. You would choose restrictive schools. You did have the option to be a generalist wizard where you didn't have a specialty, but you also didn't have restrictions. And this is what I was going for when I wrote. I remember this is what I was going for when I wrote this. Is I'm a generalist wizard. In that next line, did have a specialty in spellcraft and crafting magic items. In 3.5, crafting was a feat. Crafting magic items was a feat that you took. and there was crafting scrolls, crafting brew potion, craft wands, things like that. These were all feats that you had to take. So these two lines are basically, this is how I'm going to build DM. This is how I'm going to build my character. So not bad, but not super important for the backstory. He was the youngest student to ever graduate from the college and set out to find an adventuring party in order to learn every spell that has ever existed. All right, so this is, why does your character go on adventures, and what do they want? What do they want from the adventure? What do they want from their party? Why do they set out into the world? I'm not going to really criticize the goal, learn every spell that's ever existed, because new spells are being created all the time. And I guess that's just kind of like perfection is something to be chased. You know, you'll never learn every spell that exists, but you want to, so you're just constantly learning new spells, and that's kind of your thing. That's great. That's a great goal to have. Just kind of collecting spells, and like that's your thing. It's collecting. So one thing that is lacking from this backstory is we don't have any NPCs. We have none, zero. We could create some from the college. You could have a couple of mentors, a couple of your favorite professors, some mentors. You don't have, in my backstory guide, I mentioned that you should have parents. This character, Marklin, the very opening line is they studied at the most prestigious college and they were the youngest to ever graduate. Later on, it mentions youngest to ever graduate. This is basically saying that I was raised in this college. This is what I want out of my backstory. This is where I'm from. So your upbringing doesn't necessarily have to be, I lived with my parents and we were raised on a farm. Your backstory, where you were raised, could be the school. Maybe you were more attached to that school. Sure, Marklin had a home that he went home to, or maybe he was like, there was a boarding school or whatever. But basically, this character is, I'm not worried about the parents. My family was my college. That's fine. That's fine. You don't necessarily have to. That's why in the backstory video, I mentioned who raised you and not who are your parents. I would also like to see religion brought up in here, but that's not super important. Do they have a relationship with gods or not? They could just be a single line, doesn't have any attachments to deities, or worships Bakab in this example, which was the god of magic in 3.5. I remember this character being worshiping Bakab, but I didn't mention it in the backstory. Overall, this backstory isn't horrible. It's concise. It may be a bit too short, if anything, and it's definitely missing a lot of NPCs. I would want more NPCs from this, and maybe possibly some whys and some flaws. So flaws like, what is your character afraid of? What do they actively avoid? And the whys are, why is Marklin interested in learning every spell that ever existed? Why does this character need to be the best at everything? This character is kind of designed like, I want to be like the best wizard to ever exist, and sort of answer why is that the case. And honestly, don't even remember with this character why that was the case. I may not have even wrote that. It's just like, I want to be a super powerful wizard. I do remember that much about when I wrote this character. I want to be a super powerful wizard, and this is my idea of a super powerful wizard, a young prodigy, etc. So things to keep in mind as a DM. This is how I would, as a DM, approach this backstory. I want more NPCs, and at least mention religion. You don't have. I mentioned in the backstory video that's optional. Mention religion. Do you worship gods, and if so, which ones? Why? That sort of thing. Give me some of your favorite. Give me some of your favorite professors, your favorite classes. Why did you go generalist instead of picking a specialty? Because you probably had a favored professor, and maybe they were a generalist. Something like that. So that's it for our very first backstory review. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you want to see more of these, let me know in the comments below. I will have a text channel in the Discord. The link is in the description for backstory submissions. Just submit the text file. I'll copy it over, and I will do it in the exact same format as this video. If you have any improvements, this is sort of a new thing that I'm not sure I want to commit to yet. It's just an idea that I had that I thought I might like, and it wasn't terrible. I do want to see some of your backstories and maybe see how it goes. So yeah, let me know. This is really a sort of rough draft of this sort of style of video. And if you want to be a part of this D&D community, again, Discord link is in the description. Come by, ask questions, let me know what you think. And as always, I'll see you at sundown.